To begin your ceramic bobblehead, you're going to need 3 pieces of clay. 2 of them are going to be long rectangular prisms, and we're going to start by working with those first. So pick up your 2 rectangular prism forms of your clay and start to roll them in your hands back and forth to create, instead of a rectangular prism, something that is called a coil. A coil is a potter or ceramicist term for like a long noodle or snake of clay. These noodles of clay, these coils, are extremely useful to build so many different things out of them. And we are going to use these 2 big coils to create the base of our bobblehead. Once you've got 2 coils of clay rather than 2 rectangles of clay, it's time to attach them together at the tops. And whenever you are attaching 2 pieces of clay together, scratching and scoring the clay. Scratching and scoring the clay means to rough up or scratch the surface of the 2 pieces of clay you're attaching, and adding a little bit of water to act like clay glue. And what this does is it creates millions of little suction cups, basically, that keep that clay together all through the drying process. So make sure that you are scratching and scoring every single piece of clay that you want to stick together. It's like trying to stick 2 things together without glue when you don't scratch and score. The tricky part is the clay makes you think that it's gonna stick, but then when it dries out, it doesn't. So we scratch and score in this room with toothbrushes. These have never been used for teeth, so that's good. To use them, just dunk the toothbrush into some water and brush the clay roughly on both pieces that you want to attach. This scratches up the clay, and it also adds the water that you need at the same time. So I'm going to scratch and score the tops of these 2 coils, and then I'm going to firmly press them together at the top only to make it stick. What you should have at the end is kind of like 2 little legs. And we are going to form the base of our bobblehead sculpture using those 2 legs. We're going to bend them forward like a little person is sitting down. But then you might notice that it won't stay balanced. The clay pieces won't stay standing. So to change the center of gravity on this little setup of clay we have, we're going to lay one hand across the 2 legs, touching the table. And then we will take our other hand and push the top of the legs forward. It's almost like creating backwards knees for the legs of our bobblehead to stand. And that shifts the center of gravity from the back to the center. And now you can see that my little base will stand up on its own without rocking backwards. Like I said, this little formation is going to be where the bobblehead is going to balance on. So eventually we are going to be making a pinch pot to balance on top of this little set of legs. But it doesn't necessarily have to be legs. It could be tentacles, it could be paws, it could be wheels. You can go lots of different places with this, but we all need to start at the same spot. So to proceed with our bobblehead, its basic formation, we need to make the top portion of this set of legs, quote unquote, that we have rather pointy, because the point is where the pinch pot is going to rest at the top, and it needs to be able to wiggle around and move like a bobblehead. So take a moment and make the tip of your clay setup really pointy. Don't worry, we'll be adding personal touches in just a moment, but we need another piece of the bobblehead to start with to go off of. So like I said at the beginning of the video, you'll have a 3rd piece of clay. This is going to be a rather big cube of clay, and we're going to turn it into a pinch pot for the top segment of the bobblehead, the part that's going to move. So to make a pinch pot, if you've never made one before, you do need to start with a sphere of clay. So take a moment to bump in the corners of the cube, roll the sphere in your hand and on the table to make as neat and nice of a sphere as you can. Once you've got that sphere, you are going to take your thumb and forcefully press it into the center of your ball of clay. Now be careful, you don't want to poke your thumb all the way through the back end. So you'll want to take your other hand and press it on the back of the clay to double check that you didn't go all the way through with your thumb, just about like a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch to the other side. And once you have the hole pressed, then, and I know this is a little bit silly, but it's a great visual, with your thumb in the pinch pot, you are going to take your dominant hand, the one that you're going to pinch with, and you're going to make a quacking motion, like a quacking duck, except you're going to quack around the outside of this pinch pot. So you're going to quack, in other words, press and pinch the clay, turn the pinch pot, press the clay. And you'll want to use a nice even pressure all the way around the edges of your pinch pot so that you don't end up with a super thin side and a super thick side, but that it's all even around the edges. Making a nice even pinch pot is also going to be important for the balance and movement of your bobblehead, because if one wall of the pinch pot is super thick, it's going to be heavier. So it's going to tilt in that direction, and we want it to rest right in the center so that it almost floats on top of our base piece. So work really hard to make this pinch pot smooth with even walls all the way around. And as you may have noticed, I use a spray bottle every once in a while to spritz my clay in case it gets dry. Another item that is very useful to get your clay finished looking and smooth are wipes. So every table will have a packet of wipes that you can use to smooth out the clay. Once you have your base and then your pinch pot that's going to balance on top, you need to make sure that the two pieces fit together. So I like to take the back of my toothbrush and make an indentation inside of the pinch pot. And inside of that little indentation is where the base is going to rest. Once you have all of that set up, you have your two bobblehead pieces. They both fit together. There's a divot for the base to go into the bobblehead. It's time to get creative. Remember, the little things on the bottom of the bobblehead don't have to be legs, they don't have to be feet, they could be anything. You can cut them into multiple pieces to make tentacles, like what I'm doing. You could put 5 little cuts at the end of each to create human feet. You could add fur texture with a wooden poker tool to make those cat feet or dog paws. I want you to take the formation of the bobblehead and make it completely your own. So what I did was I chopped my 2 legs in half to create 4 legs, and then I'm going to build 4 more coils to put at the back in order to create an octopus. And the pinch pot is going to be the octopus's head. So you can add more clay to both the base and the top. You can take away clay. No matter what you do though, you need to make sure that the integrity of the bobblehead structure stays balanced. So if you do add clay or take away clay to this piece, which you should to make it your own, just double check every once in a while that the piece stands up by itself and that the bobblehead on top is going to in fact balance. Other things you need to watch out for are making sure that you scratch and score every single piece of clay that gets added to your bobblehead. Remember to add 1 or 2 spritzes of water every time that your clay seems to be cracking or drying out. Don't forget to use the wipes to smooth away the clay once it's been formed and shaped how you want it. And if you follow all of these guidelines, you should be able to be very creative and explore and make exactly what you're picturing for your bobblehead. A couple of things to consider when creating your clay bobblehead masterpiece is to think about texture. You can add texture to your piece many ways, but two of them are by adding clay and by taking away clay. The additive method and the subtractive method. I'm going to use both for my octopus project. So I'm going to use the additive method, adding clay to my piece to create the octopus's suction cups on their tentacles. And then the subtractive method by using one of my wooden clay tools to press into the clay a texture. So one way is adding more clay to the structure by creating the suction cups for me personally. And the other way is really taking away the mass of the clay by pressing into it. I am so excited to see everyone experiment with the additive and subtractive methods of adding texture and elements to your clay bobblehead. I'm so excited to see your creativity. Just make sure that you have all the parts and pieces when you're done. The basic requirements of this project is that your bobblehead has a top made of a pinch pot. It also needs to have a bottom structure with a spindle or a pointy part for that pinch pot to balance on. So you need your two beginning parts. Then you also need to add clay coils and other pieces that you added to the head and body with scratching and scoring. You also need to make sure that somewhere, somehow, you add texture to the piece with either the additive or subtractive methods. Your bobblehead needs to have your name scratched into the bottom of the pinch pot so that no one can see it from the outside, but we know whose is whose. And also, your bobblehead needs to actually work. Your top segment needs to gently balance on top of the spindle that you created on the bottom. So to do that, before you put away your clay to dry and get put into the kiln, where the shape of it will be finalized forever, you need to make sure that there is a divot on the top of your pinch pot that your spindle perfectly rests in so that it floats or balances and wiggles and has movement. That is one of the requirements, so make it happen.